My name is Michael Solt. I'm the Dean of the College of Business Administration. Been here since June. Love the place, love the people, and love events like this. So I'm really happy to be here. I'm going to turn it over to Patrick McClanahan, who is not only coordinating the panel today, he's our Dixon Family Leader in Residence this year, and so far he's been a joy to work with and really provided a lot of great lectures to students and faculty. So thank you, Patrick. I'm going to allow him to do a more in-depth introduction of the panelists, so I will just say thank you to different people. And let's see, this is an event of the Ukleja Center for Ethical Leadership, and I want to say hello and thank you to Mick Ukleja. He and his wife Louise are the founders who have made this center possible and events like this. So good morning, Mick, and thank you so much. Also, we have a former governor of the state of California here, George Deukmejian. Thank you for coming, Governor. I see the governor around many events, so he's a great member of the community and great supporter of the university, so thank you for coming. I see our former mayor of Long Beach, Una Sato. And I see back there, sitting next to Governor Deukmejian, Randy Gordon, the President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for coming, Randy. Appreciate your support. Let's see. Also, we have Erin Swetland. She's a student here. Not just a student, though. She's the president of our Associated Students Incorporated, and I see her around doing lots of things. She's a communications major, but a business minor, and she's involved with lots of activities across the campus, advocating and supporting students' rights. So thank you, Erin. In the front row here, Ahmed Abulaka is also a student leader. He's the president of our ABSOC, Associated Business Students Organizing Committee, Organizing Council. And it's a very strong group. There's like 11 different student organizations, and they band together in ABSOC, and I think work together with Aaron and ASI quite a bit. So thank you for coming. Don't want to forget the former dean of the College of Business Administration, Mike Walter. How you doing, Mike? And he's invited us over to the Walter Pyramid this afternoon for a little intimate get-together around the basketball court. Is that right? Right. And we beat Weber State today. Is that correct? That's correct. Okay. Guarantees? Okay, no guarantees. But thank you, Mike. And thank you for the gift that made possible the Walter Pyramid. And a couple other people, Pam Gerritsen, she's on the Ukleja Center board, so pretty new, and we're going to ramp her up and get her working pretty hard. So enjoy today. From Boeing Corporation, Craig Cross, how you doing? Surprise. A good friend of the university, Halbert Hargrove, is an investment advising firm, not an investment management firm, and has been a great friend of us, helping me get connected to the community. So thank you for coming. Omar Bentley, the Associate Dean of the College of Business Administration. I think that's about it as far as hellos and welcomes. And as you know, well, I was a faculty member before I was an associate dean at San Jose State, before I was a dean here at CBA. I can talk. I can give lectures. I can just keep going. So I'm going to shut up and just turn this over in a second to Bill Schumard, who is also a member of the Ukleja Center Board. And Bill is also president and CEO of the Special Olympics. Is that right? He knows a little bit about the Walter Pyramid too, I do believe. Is that right? Because in a prior life, he was athletic director here at Cal State Long Beach. So a great friend of the Ukleja Center, a great friend of the university, great friend for the community. So thank you. Bill, why don't you come on up here and introduce you.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to California State University Long Beach on Homecoming Saturday. And in these difficult and uncertain times that we go through, I am often reminded by the chairman of our board at Special Olympics, Patrick McClanahan, that we have to look to reinvent ourselves. And I think today is a great example because we are having we are having homecoming without a football team. And that is a great way to reinvent yourselves, and I think kind of just a sign of the times. I have a very simple theory that when good people get to know good people, nothing but good things can happen. And when I came aboard at Special Olympics a few years ago, I wanted to make sure that Pat and also a good friend and longtime colleague, Mick Ukleja, got to know each other. And lo and behold, here we are today, introducing our leader in residence from this fall, Patrick McClanahan, who's been given this honor. In fact, I have to say we made this selection last summer when Pat was senior vice president at CBS KCAL. It was even before he got promoted to president general manager. So that will show you the wisdom involved, Dean, in your governing council. Pat is actually the president and general manager of CBS 2 KCAL 9. He is the executive in charge of the largest local broadcast operation in the United States. As I mentioned, in his role as leader in residence, he's had a pretty therapeutic couple of weeks. In chatting with him as he's gone through a couple of weeks, he's very much enjoyed going into the classroom and sharing his knowledge and expertise and experiences with the students. He's had a chance to mingle with some of you. He actually did the Cook's Tour at the brand new CBS KCAL state-of-the-art studios earlier this week with some of our students, and now he's put together just an all-star panel that I think you will really, really enjoy. Just a little bit about Pat's background. He got into the field in the mid-'80s. He started his own production company. It wasn't very long before he moved on to the Prime Ticket Network and rose to be vice president of programs and production. When Prime Ticket was bought by Fox, he then became senior VP at Fox Sports Net for 12 regional sports networks. In a somewhat of an ethical and moral decision, he decided he had to get off the road and spend more time with his family. So he went to KCAL Channel 9 in 1997, first to head up sports, but eventually became senior vice president there. And then in 2002, when Viacom, CBS, looked to move in and buy Channel 2 locally, they talked to the people at Channel 9 about forming a duopoly and running two television stations under one roof in one marketplace. And Pat was part of the senior team that accomplished that. He's won numerous Emmys for his work in television. He's also very active in the community, and I need not say any more than the fact that he's been involved as our chairman of the board of Special Olympics Southern California for the past decade. And it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you Patrick McClanahan. Pat.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. What a time it's been the last couple of weeks, be able to talk to students about something so important. Topic today, ethical leadership in the media. A lot of people think those two words don't go well together. But I will tell you that I want to congratulate Mick and Dean Solt. What a great thing to provide students. Wish I had a Ukleja Center for Ethical Leadership when I was in college. What a great core element to develop people's careers. And that's what I talked a lot about to students. I encourage them that it's like investment of money. I don't know how many of you had parents or grandparents that said, save your money. And I had some friends and advisors who told me all about the compound interest, the magic of compound interest. Save your money, and by the time you're retired, it's unbelievable how it grows. Well, I had a chance to encourage the students this past 2 weeks about investing in ethical leadership, and that compounds positively into a career, into relationships throughout your, in all areas of your life, and that's an investment worth making. I talked to them about what the issues are when you don't develop ethical leadership, and about their reputations, about reputations that include things like trust and integrity. Trust that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, and integrity that your actions match what your beliefs are. And we talked a little bit about the issues of non-ethical leadership and how many reputations have been destroyed. in political careers, in business careers. Many people right now are looking at the economic situation that we have and going, what kind of unethical leadership decisions were made that led us to the situation that we're in today. And like anything, when they say that it takes 10 positives to make up a negative, how difficult is it when you have a bad reputation to turn that reputation around? So I encourage them at their age, at this time in their life, to be committed to that kind of ethical leadership, and that they will see that it will prove to be the best investment they make in their careers. I had the fortune of learning ethical leadership early on, having my own company in the 80s, and it was, I didn't think of it as ethical leadership, but I was forced to have ethical leadership, to develop trust and integrity for my clients that wanted to know that I was going to take care of them. If things went wrong, I was going to make sure that they were made good. With my employees, that they were in an environment that had trust and integrity. Early on, when I was a sports producer, an associate producer I had, he was that kind of person, and I invested in him, and as I moved through my career, he was promoted behind me because he was someone that I could trust to take care of our clients, to take care of our employees the way I would do it, and that's with trust and integrity. Ethical leadership in the media. I just want to give you, my job today is to moderate a panel, and I just want to give you a sense of the complexity of what we're facing and why ethical leadership is so important today. So I'll just share a few things with you about our industry, the broadcast industry, and then I'll introduce our panel, throw some good questions at them, and while we're doing that, I want you to be sure throughout today to think of questions yourself, and you'll have a chance to ask them questions. The state of the media industry, and in particular the broadcast industry, is mind-boggling. When you think about the explosion of technology and distribution, I'm in an industry where it used to be 3 networks. Imagine what it is today with the proliferation of cable, of satellite, of internet. In fact, our competition is anybody who takes their eyeballs away from us, and that's happening. Think of YouTube. Hulu.com, I don't know if you're familiar with that. NBC and Fox joined forces for Hulu. All of the options that people have today, and those options are growing exponentially. So we're under tremendous pressure to figure out the people who get their arms around technology and what the future of this business is. They're going to be the people that win. Now, and think further about what's happening in our industry. TiVo, DVRs. Skipping commercials, and I'm here to say right now, skipping commercials is unethical. Very, very, very bad. It feeds my family, so I just want you to keep in mind that next time you start skipping commercials. But what's the impact of skipping commercials on our industry? Well, what's happened is that advertisers now want product placement. Now they want to be in the programs. They want to be in the sporting events, or one of the challenges that we'll talk about in a little while is they want to be in our news. We have largest local broadcast operation in the country, as was mentioned. That's 11 hours of news a day we do between 2 stations. The Code of Ethics in News calls for us to be careful about that product placement and who has control over our product. So that's a huge issue as we look forward. And then come February 17th of this coming year, February 17th, anybody know what's in store? Oh, DTV, the digital transition. Have you seen any commercials encouraging you to figure out how that works? Well, think of the impact that has. Think of the impact that has on our business. If we don't get people to figure it out, we're going to lose customers. It's also interesting that in the broadcast industry, you've got cable and satellite. You've got phone companies that are now getting into the fray with Verizon, Vios, and all those kinds of things. And if you have one of those, you don't need to worry about it because they're going to make sure your signal is converted from analog to digital. So if you have cable, satellite, or one of the other providers, they'll take care of it, what comes into your home. If you have an antenna, then there's a whole series of stuff that has to happen. And we even just were made aware this last week or so that not only do you have to figure out how to hook up your antenna with that box that maybe you get a coupon from the government and go install the box and make it work or whatever, we've now discovered that you have to actually rescan your channels. So you know, like when you buy a new TV and you hit the scan button, it goes through and it looks at all the channels. Well, that box doesn't work unless they do that. And to complicate matters, our channel really isn't channel 2 and channel 9. Through a technology called PSIP, that's what appears on your TV. We're actually channel 63 and channel 43. And 63 is going to become 43, and 43 is going to become 9 in this rejiggering. So if people don't reset their scan, we're out of luck. We've lost about 18% of the market that gets their broadcast through over-the-air antennas. So it is a mind-boggling transition that we're going through. And on top of the complexity of digital transition, you've got the fact that once we have digital transition, you know, we have these analog signals that the government in broadcast provided us with. Now they're taking those analog systems back, and they are now giving us this higher quality digital signal. Of course, they've had almost $20 billion in commitments for phone companies and communication companies to buy that analog system, so the government's going to make out okay. But what we can do with that digital system is what's called multicasting. Does anybody know what that is? Multicasting means we can take that digital channel, which 1080, you hear about full 1080 is high definition. Well, we can take that spectrum and we can divide it up into multiple channels, to multiple streams. So I can have CBS 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 2.5, all different channels. Maybe one's all weather, maybe one's all news, maybe one's all sports. And I can do the same thing with Channel 9. Now imagine if everybody in the market decided that that's the approach that they were going to take. Divide up this new system with these multiple channels. So now take all of the channels in the market, multiply it times 5, on top of the 500 cable channels, on top of the internet, on top of satellite, and it is mind-boggling. How do you get a share of business to make your business viable? And that's the kind of issues we're facing. And because of that, because of the TiVo, because of all those channels, advertisers are struggling with how do I get my impressions, the whole marketing mix. Certain number of impressions on radio, billboards, whatever. So imagine if you're a buyer that's purchasing advertising, placing advertising on stations, on radio, on television, and all these. How are you going to reach your audience? That's what we're challenged to figure out. And if we can figure that out, then we'll be successful. Now, couple the complexity of broadcast television, and just throw in a little situation that we're going through called the economy. An economy that we have never seen in our time. And when you start talking about things like General Motors going out of business, who can't go out of business? I mean, the possibility is really daunting. So for us to figure out the complexity of our business tied to an economic issue, then all of a sudden those ethical decisions, I believe, go up exponentially. Because all of a sudden you're concerned about the short-term gain and not what the long-term investment is. So as we look ahead, as those ethical decisions lead, as all this leads to ethical decisions, it's my belief that we are more hungry for leadership and ethical leadership than we've ever seen. I think that was the theme of this last political campaign you saw. Everybody wanted to be led. You know, what's the future? What's the positive, negative? Tell us, communicate to us. And that's the challenge that we have as ethical leaders. Some of the decisions that we're faced in that complexity has to do with our product. And for us, it's our programming. Most of the decisions are programming. Our programming is regulated by the FCC in broadcast television. Now, they tell us things that we can and can't do, and unfortunately, our competitors, cable and satellite, they're not under the same scrutiny as we are. Think about it. Think about the type of programming that's on HBO and Showtime. Think about our programming on CBS. What would our biggest rated program, CSI, look like if it was produced on HBO? How would it be different in language and content? You look at a show that we recently that we recently canceled, actually, a show called Swingtown, about swingers from the 70s and couples and all those kinds of things. A lot of people think, well, that show might have been successful if it was produced for Showtime instead of network television. So those kinds of regulations add another layer of complexity of what we can and cannot do. We have a group called Broadcast Standards. Is very important about what we do, and that follows those regulations. While we look at our programs, what we're responsible to put over the air, it happens all the time with commercials, and oftentimes I'm called upon to look at commercials that advertisers say, will you guys be willing to air this? And our salespeople come to me and say, what do you think about this? It could be commercials from very important things like PETA and the ethical treatment of animals. But I will tell you that I've gotten some commercials from them that I've had to reject because of the nature of it. It might be circus animals that are being whipped or beaten, and they actually graphically show that. Well, is that something that is ethically right for me to put in front of the general public? We had one recently where a mother and father and their daughter were in like what was an adoption agency. And the person that was in charge of the adoption agency says, so have you decided about adopting a dog? And the parents say, yes, our daughter's so excited, but you know what? We've decided, we found this dog down at the pet store and we're going to buy this dog. And so the guy says, well, that's great, congratulations. The little girl looks all excited, and he says, but your decision to buy that dog is going to result in this dog, and picks up a dead dog and drops it on the desk and says, this dog in the shelter is dead because you've made that decision. And the little girl's face is just, well, I guess it's impactful, but is that right for me to put on the air? So sometimes I think PETA and some of these organizations just like to mess with us and see, and then we end up getting in a discussion and on the phone and an argument about what they're doing and why we can't do it. Sometimes we ask them to make changes and then we'll air it. We have legal issues with commercials. Internet gambling is not legal, mainly because of offshore betting and all those kinds of things. Those companies have now tried to create a way around that. That you might see a gambling site, and if you go to gambling.com, then you can bet. If you go to gambling.net, well, that's just learning how to bet. So they're getting around that, and they think if they build their brand by teaching you how to gamble, then they can get on our airwaves, and so we deal with all of that. Comedy Central, which is a network that we just own, they've got a comedy show that's really out there, and they sent us a commercial. There was a promo for the show, and the last scene of the commercial was two young African American boys riding on a bike, and they look and they yell something at the camera and they fire a gun right at the camera. So even though it's part of a comedy skit, is that something in our community locally that I want to put out on the air? We've had the recent issue of the train crash in Chatsworth. Immediately, and you might hear a little bit about that today, but immediately after we did all this great coverage and investigative reporting and the tragedy and all that kind of stuff, immediately sales is in my office saying, this attorney wants to air this spot. And it's an ambulance chasing type spot. Not only do they say we can help you sue, it shows tragic images of the event. And so I had to take a position. I said, you know what, I'm glad to air your attorney normal spot, and people can infer that I've got an issue and there's an attorney I can call, but we're not going to let you exploit a tragedy on our airwaves. But I have to be honest with you that when you take the economic situation right now, that there's always that little, when you look at a commercial like that, there's always that temptation to say, well, how much is the order? It's really $100,000, really, maybe I'll look the other way, or maybe I'll run it and we'll see if we get any complaints by the public. And if we get any complaints, then we'll pull it. Those are the kinds of decisions that we have to make about what goes on our air. And then we've got the obscenity delay button. It's your favorite, huh? Yes. The obscenity delay button. Thank you, Janet Jackson, and your wardrobe malfunction. Thanks to Janet Jackson and the wardrobe malfunction, we've had to install this big red button. It looks like a game show. And we have someone that sits and watches programming, and if it's programming that something might happen that we don't want to go out over the air, like live programming, like live sports, if Kobe gets in an argument with a referee or the Grammys, and there might be an artist that gets up there and blurts something out or whatever, that we run it on a 7-second delay. And that person sits there and they listen, and if they hear something or see something that's not good, boom, they hit that button and it blanks it out before it goes out over our air. The beauty of our duopoly is the two stations together, is that the same day that Janet Jackson had her wardrobe malfunction, we had a Laker game on KCAL. And Shaq was in an interview after the game, and he didn't know that he was live. He thought he was being taped. And he went off on this expletive-laced response. And so we got nailed for both. Now the issue is that it's costly. It used to be, before the Janet Jackson problem, a station could be charged $27,500 if they were deemed by the FCC to not do the right thing. The Janet Jackson episode got everybody up in arms in Washington and organizations protecting children and parents and all that kind of stuff, to the point where that a new law was signed in, and it's the Broadcast Decency Act of 2005. And that gave the FCC the right, instead of $27,500, to fine us $325,000 per episode. So the little red button's a nice investment. So we've got those issues, and then finally our news operation. As I mentioned, 11 hours of news a day. It's a huge part of our image and what we do. And in the news business, and some of the stuff that we're going to get into in a minute, is that there's a code of ethics, and things like public trust, truthfulness, fairness, integrity, independence, accountability. Those are all things that give you the trust and the integrity with your viewing audience, that if you follow those, they can trust you to be their choice for providing you with the news. And we're going to get into some of that. And perhaps most important, as in any business, ethical leadership involves leading people. It's how you treat your people, it's how you treat your vendors, it's even how you treat your competitors. And those are things that we might get in a little bit as well. It's all encompassing. What's right, what's wrong, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. Those are things in the media industry we deal with every day. And to help us explore the myriad of ethical decisions that we have to make in the media, we have a great panel for you, and I'm going to introduce them now. First, Rich Archbold. Since 1997, Rich has been the executive editor of the Press Telegram here in Long Beach. Before that, he was managing editor of the Press Telegram, and for almost 20 years, it was in that position. Before coming to Long Beach in 1978, he worked for 13 years at the Miami Herald as a public affairs reporter, city editor, and managing editor of the Herald's bureau in Fort Lauderdale. Before joining the Herald, he worked as a government reporter for the Omaha World Herald and a State House reporter for the United Press International in Lincoln, Nebraska. Graduate of the University of Illinois, he's a consummate journalist, having served as the editor early on, even for his high school newspaper, and the Daily Illini for the University of Illinois. He's also involved in the community here in Long Beach. He's on the board of directors of the Long Beach Library Foundation, the National Conference for Community and Justice, the St. Mary's Medical Center Foundation, and the Long Beach Memorial Medical Center trustees. He lives in El Dorado Park Estates here in Long Beach with his wife, Pat. They have two daughters, Kelly, a graduate of UCLA. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry. Actually, my wife went to UCLA. We have a mixed marriage, but so congratulations on that. And Katie, who's a graduate of the University of Cal Berkeley. In addition to having ink in his veins, Rich is also an avid baseball fan. He has a large collection of baseball memorabilia, including autographed baseballs. He's a die-hard Chicago Cubs fan, so that makes him very optimistic and very patient. You know, they're for sale. We can, yeah, any buyers? Would you please welcome Rich Archibald? Next, my favorite news director in the entire country, Nancy Bauer Gonzalez, is Vice President and News Director for CBS 2 and KCAL 9. As I said, more than 11 hours of news a week and over 11 hours of news a day and over 60 hours of news a week. She's a native Californian and has held her current position, came to KCAL in 2001, and then became the head of both operations when we merged in 2002. Under her leadership, KCAL has won more local Emmys and major industry awards than any other television station in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, since taking over her responsibilities for KCBS News Department, the station's 11 p.m. newscast has won the Best Newscast Award for the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences for 4 consecutive years. The duopoly's other broadcasts have been honored by the Associated Press Television Radio Association of California and the Nevada and the Los Angeles Press Club. She joined KCAL after a highly successful 13-year career at one of our competitors, NBC Channel 4, where she rose through the ranks to become news director in 1997. Under her direction, the station swept all competition in the November 1997 ratings period, winning 7 of the 7 newscasts in the Los Angeles market, which is why we stole her from Channel 4. Before joining NBC, she spent 8 years in San Diego for a station there and served as news director. She's a graduate from Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo. She's born and raised in Downey, and they make their home in suburban Los Angeles. Please welcome Nancy Bauer Gonzalez. And our final, to round out our panel, is Ralph Winter. Ralph has proved himself to be one of Hollywood's most profitable producers in motion picture and television. While producing movies for 20th Century Fox for the past 10 years, Ralph has produced some of the studio's biggest box office successes, including X-Men trilogy and the Fantastic Four movies, which together have grossed nearly $3 billion. Currently, he is finishing the movie Wolverine for summer of this coming year's release. Throughout his career, Ralph has produced over 25 films, dating back to executive producer and producing Star Trek 4, 5, and 6. Any Trekkie fans? Okay. He is a founding partner of a commercial production company, Thomas Winter Cook, where he and his partners have successfully pioneered branded entertainment with production integration ranging from global beverage brands to automobiles. Their award-winning directors regularly have spots in the Super Bowl. He is a graduate of UC Berkeley, married, 2 children, active in the community affairs and performing arts projects, speaks regularly around the country at universities and film festivals, and serves on several boards. Would you please welcome Ralph Winter? Okay, a couple things. Like I mentioned, keep in mind the issues and stuff. We're going to have some time for questions and answers, and oftentimes that's where the good stuff comes out. I want to encourage you guys that this is being taped, and we don't have a red button. We have no abstaining delay button. So keep that in mind with your answers, please.
Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, Nancy. And I encourage each of you to interact with each other. This isn't about a little red light going off and your time is up. If you have questions for each other or you want to jump in and add something, feel free to do that. So we're gonna start with a couple quick warm-up. We're gonna get right to the meat of this whole issue. A couple quick warm-up questions. So I need to know from each of you your favorite flavor of ice cream. Rich?
Neapolitan.
Okay. Well-rounded, yes.
I have
Nancy?
issues. Mine would be Cold Stone cake batter ice cream, double cookie dough, double caramel.
Wow. And Ralph?
Chocolate anytime, anywhere.
Chocolate anytime, anywhere. Very nice. And then one last little warm-up question. I need you, and Ralph, will start with you on this one. Favorite childhood movie?
I don't know if I was a child when I saw it, but I love the movie E.T. My kids love it, and just a great escape 2 hours.
Toby Tyler joins the circus.
Toby?
You said childhood.
Rich?
Can I say two? Any movie with Roy Rogers and The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, nice,
Wizard of Oz, that's
nice.
true.
Mine is The Incredible Mr. Limpid, starring Don Knotts. How do you guys feel about that? What we'd like to do is we'd like to start by each of you just taking a minute to describe for us your job, the nature of your job, what your job entails, the number and type of people you oversee. And Rich?
Well, I have the best job in Long Beach, and I'm looking out at the audience, and I know more than half of you, so I'm going to have to change some of my remarks about ethics, because I have a lot of ethical stories about almost everybody I see, of one form or another, especially the former governor who's sitting back there. But I think I have the best job. I'm the editor of the Press Telegram. I call it the Daily Miracle. It's a miracle that gets out every day, and it's just a miracle in how we put together thousands and thousands of facts every day. No offense to TV, but reading the front page of the Press Telegram takes more than an hour or more, and the newscasts on TV with their commercials, and now people aren't reading or watching commercials. I'm glad to hear that. But we put out thousands of facts every day, and it's amazing to me how well we do that with the few errors that we do. The Press Telegram is part of the Los Angeles newspaper group, which includes the Los Angeles Daily News, the Daily Breeze, the San Gabriel Valley Tribune papers, the San Bernardino Sun, and the Ontario Daily Bulletin, and we're part of the Media News Group, headquartered in Denver, which is the fourth largest newspaper group in the United States. My job is a tough one. And in preparing for today, I was thinking, I read something that I'd written about 20 years ago. I was worried about meeting deadlines, and I wish we were back in those days worried about meeting deadlines. Now we're worried about coming out at all with all these economic problems. And I'm dealing with customers who are not bashful about letting us know their complaints, and some of the people in this room I know have complained to me about our dirty ink, and why do you put all the news about Democrats on the front page? And a former governor who will be unnamed complained to me because we had dropped the comic strip Pickles, which was very important to him in his daily life. And that's what we find out in a newspaper, is we are essential to people in Long Beach. We're the dominant news provider. Luckily, we have no local TV station here. We have no radio station covering news, so it's the Press Telegram and a few assorted other publications.
My job title is Vice President and News Director, but when I get up every day and I go through my life every day, I really truly try to go through it as a viewer, which is difficult. It's kind of a two-headed beast. And my favorite movie, Toby Tyler Actually Joins the Circus, is kind of today very appropriate for me, because many days life for all of us, for you, for me, it is somewhat of a circus that we kind of have to get through. But at the end of the day of all of that, I have to go home, I have to get in my car, and I have to feel good about what we put on the air, and I have to understand that my 10-year-old daughter can watch it. And that's tough. It's really tough every day. So the mechanics of my job is, as Patrick said, we produced 11 hours of news. What that looks like to me is 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 11 a.m., noon, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, and 11 o'clock. So we all throughout the day are constantly examining issues, because you don't put everything to bed, and Rich now knows too with websites, he no longer puts things to bed, and then you go away and you eat lunch or whatever you used to do. It's just constant, it's 24 hours a day. And so if a mistake gets on the air and it's 11 o'clock at night, there better be a whole line of communication, or that same mistake is going to be broadcast on my air at 5 and 6 a.m. before most of the people who work for me wake up. So it's a big, long day, and we have a lot of really good people that work with us that are assigned to kind of watch that. We cover 49,426 square miles. That's why we're called broadcasting. We can't get into the bedroom communities as much as the papers do, and that's why even though the papers are our competition, to me they're also somewhat of our partners in this whole thing, because I come into his neighborhood, once a week if I'm lucky, and I'll do a story, I'll dip in, largely because I see it on his website and I send a reporter out and we do the story, or we read it in the paper. And so we kind of feel like newspapers are not only our competition in this day and age, but they're also our partners in terms of serving the public and serving our viewers. And we oftentimes partner with them in order to do that, because they can reach into the communities that we can't, but yet we can reach in there with a broadcast signal that they can't get to. We have about 50 anchors, reporters, weather and sports people at the duopoly for both stations. We have a whole host of additional producers, writers, photographers, editors, and that's kind of the long and short of the staffing. How it looks on television is different in different days. Last weekend, on Thursday night, a fire broke out in Montecito, and so our coverage looked very fire-ish on Thursday night. And on Friday night, when everybody thought they were going to go home to a beautiful Southern California weekend, we hit the coverage of the Sylmar fire at 11 o'clock on Friday night, and we went off the air Sunday night at 11:30.
She woke me up at 11:20.
And we broadcast 48 and a half hours of continuous coverage through the fires. Now, why did we do that? We can get into a lot of that, but basically why we did it was we became a checkpoint for people, and we became a place where people could go. And with the ability to have two stations, we were able to still run the things that we felt people really wanted to see, like football. We don't have our head in the sand that we don't think other people want to see other things in their life. So we were able to run the sporting events on CBS. We were able to keep the coverage on KCAL, and it works out, really well. But we did it because it was the right thing to do. It's a really hard decision to make, because as you can imagine, that was a lot of money that the stations lost together. So it's, all those things go into it, but is it a hard decision for me? No. I'm the one that says, we got to stay on, we got to stay on. It's that guy who, has to, then take everything into consideration while I'm in his ear just constantly saying, we have to do this, we have to do this, we have to do this.
Is that a USC football game?
No, but it was Army-Navy. And Notre Dame, which I've now learned a lot about, actually. So that's what it looked like that day. The night of Janet Jackson, what it looked like was a totally different day in the newsroom. It was a bunch of us in there on a Sunday for Super Bowl, and I was sitting there watching the halftime, and it happened. And I looked out in the newsroom, and everybody was just going about their business because they weren't really watching. I kind of watch a little bit more because that's what I'm supposed to do. And I looked out, and nobody said anything, and I called my news director friend in San Francisco, and I said, did you just see that? See what? Okay, bye. And then I went immediately and got the tape, because in that day we were still tape. And about 20 of us slow-mode the wardrobe malfunction about 50 times to see, okay, how much of that did we get? And, what did we get? And now, oh my gosh, what do we do with this? Because we can't just ignore it and come out of the gate at 11 o'clock broadcast with whatever we were going to lead with, which I'm sure was something to do with the Super Bowl, but not quite that. And then we were faced with, okay, but that's our network also. And so we came blasting out of the gate with the Janet Jackson wardrobe malfunction, because that's what we're paid to do, and that's what we do. And it was an interesting story, and we had by that time we'd had about an hour and a half, so we had some reaction and things like that. And then, of course, the whole thing kind of exploded the next day. So those are kind of two different, really different days of what it looks like, when people are kind of behind the scenes. Our main mission and our goal in life is to seek the truth, like you all want. We're kind of all in it for the same thing. We always want people to be honest. I always tell people at work, I can fix everything if you're just honest with me. The minute you lie, we're dead. The cover-up is the worst. So if you just walk in and you tell me what you did wrong, I can almost always fix it, or we can figure out what to do about it. And that is a very hard thing for people to do in this day and age. It's very hard for people to come in and say, I made a mistake, I did something wrong, here's what I did. But we really try to create that environment, and in order to do that, I am very often say in front of large groups of people, oh, I really messed that up. And a lot of times I do that because I want them to understand that it's okay to say that in front of large groups of people, because it is, as you get older, it gets harder for some reason. It was a little bit easier when you were younger, but it gets harder to admit that you've made a very big mistake and it went on the air. And I love it when people walk in and say, I just made a really big mistake. And I just say, okay, have a seat, let's go. And we're not doing brain surgery, there's no one dying on the table. So this is something that we can get through. Our second, obviously, pillar is to be fair and balanced. That is a challenge every single day because everybody has life experiences. The recent election was a tremendous challenge for newsrooms all across America. I broke up fights in the newsroom. I had to speak to people individually about not caring who they were voting for. And we because this election crossed a lot of lines that we hadn't had in the newsroom before in terms of elections. But the good news is everybody was passionate about it, and everybody voted. And that was the lucky strike extra of all the baggage that we had to handle, was that everybody inside and outside the newsroom was excited about the election. I think that probably our integrity is what we carry around with us, and we can never lose. The first thing I ask anybody when I think I might want to go work for them, like if I'm going to hop places or whatever, in television, I ask them, what can I see your research on your public image? Because if you're going to try to turn around a television station that people don't trust, I don't want to go there. It's a lot of work, and it's probably a 20-year job. And so when you're young, you can do it, but as you're getting, my age, it's like, okay, do I have 20 years? Because that is, you lose public trust and you stop the integrity, and you pretty much, you're done. Everything else you can fix. The weather guy you can fix. The sports guy you can fix. The anchor that, has the wrong clothing on you can fix. But you start losing your public trust and your integrity, and that's a big issue. The other thing that we do in a big way at the duopoly is we take responsibility for our content. And that comes in the form of correcting mistakes, doing the right thing. During the fire, I had a reporter stand up, great reporter, makes one mistake every 5 years, stand up and basically say that a business was burned down in Yorba Linda, and not only that, but everybody's car inside it was destroyed. And the guy called me frantic. Wasn't mad, well, he was mad, but was a very polite sort of mad, and said, okay, what can you do for me? Rather than call the lawyer, call the this, call the that, I hustled her. I said, can you be there in 5 minutes? Yeah, we did a 5-minute live shot with him. He was able to tell people on our air, I'm alive and well, your cars are fine, let's go. We were on the air for 48 and a half hours. I think we probably could give the guy 5 minutes. So those are the kind of things that we do, but you have to jump on quickly, or your reputation can go down the drain fairly quickly. That's just part of it. And then comes the economy, the internet, technology over content, and the revolving media landscape, and things get very challenging.
Yeah, and we'll get into more of those kinds of things. Ralph, your job is easy. Your Hollywood, your movies, your popcorn, your...
I was just thinking how different it is from what Nancy does in terms of taking responsibility for content, seeking the truth. Man, I'm in a completely different business. I'm a producer at the studios, and I make commercials as part of my business as well. And everyone asks the question, what does a producer do? And my wife is still asking that same question. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences awards the Best Picture Oscar to the producer. Someone has to be the flag waver, the champion, the cheerleader, pom-poms, whatever you want to call it, from the inception of the idea and then drag it across the finish line in the theaters and DVD and all the windows of selling the product. And that's what a producer does. Someone has to be where the buck stops. And I don't have any training to be in this business. I'm a UC Berkeley grad in history. So it's another story about how I got into this. But it's a very interesting job because it manages so many different kinds of disciplines. And it's what keeps me interested in having fun every day in what I do. I probably on a day-to-day basis manage 10 to 12 people that are artists in terms of developing material, the actual production of the movie, the distribution, the marketing, the post-production, all those elements. We're currently finishing Wolverine, which opens May 1st, 2009. We spent 9 months in Sydney, Australia, shooting that because that's where Hugh Jackman, who's also a producer on the movie, wanted to shoot it. And the job varies from, in pre-production, when you're getting a movie ready, trying to find the right writer, trying to convince a financier or a distributor to take this product because there's an audience that wants to see it. Then there's the production period. We're actually making it. Now I'm in charge of 300 to 2,000 people in terms of what gets done on a daily basis. And I really try to work myself out of a job for that period of time so that I can have some perspective and let everyone else knows how to run the day and get the directors managing the actors and staging the material. We've got assistant directors. Everyone else is doing their job. I get all the mistakes. I get all the problems that come. And somebody's got to be the forward-looking radar and be sure that we're actually going to be able to turn the camera on in the following day. And then in post-production, it's a smaller group, and the hours get different in finishing the product and adding sound, adding the visual effects, adding the music, and then sometimes testing it in front of an audience and being sure that the movie you wanted to make when you thought you were going to make E.T. and thought you were going to make a world-changing movie, and then the reality set in when you actually had to shoot it, and now what you've got is in the Avid, and you've got to figure out, does anybody want to see this besides my mom? So that process is multi-discipline and fun. And for me, the issue about integrity comes about, the product we're making. I think there's issues that we do have responsibility in terms of, particularly if you're going to build a brand or build a successful career in what we make. And then for me, it's also about the team and people that I work with in terms of what that kind of leadership looks like and what's effective. And for me, it's a marathon race. You have to pace yourself. If you're going to be successful, you're going to work a long time, but it's about understanding that arc has to have a long-term view in it, a short-term view, and I think you have a short-term career.
That's great. I'm a big fan of the principles, basic principles of marketing, and it starts with who's my audience, what's my product, how am I going to present that product in a way that evokes the desired response, and I think all of us up here are interested in that. Let's talk about the audience. For you readers and Nancy viewers and Ralph moviegoers, how do you guys stay in touch with who your audience is, and how does that impact your decisions about your responsibility to that audience?
Well, I'll start with that. Our readers are not bashful. Most of them are sitting out here in the room, and you know, and all they do is pick up the phone and call me or email me. We are a mass medium, so we are trying to appeal to everybody. And we know that's very difficult and almost impossible, especially with some language issues that we're facing with our Cambodian community, in some respects with the Latino community. But we try to appeal to everybody. One of the areas where newspapers have had problems probably for years, when I first got into the business, I heard, well, how are we going to appeal to these younger readers? You know, all they do is watch television, you know, and turn off their brain when they're watching the TV. Sorry, Nancy. That's a joke, Nancy. But younger people, today with the advent of the internet and online and the website we are really going into kind of uncharted waters as to who is actually you know, using our website and going online. Just a question out there, how many of you out there go online for news? Yeah, all the young people raise their hand, except you didn't raise your hand, Mike.
Those who want to appear young, yes.
So, and we do research. I mean, we've done research till it comes out your ears, and we do focus groups, and we do all that kind of thing. Readers write us letters to the editor. We have a speak out phone where they can call us, and then now they're emailing, faxing, and all of that. We constantly meet about who the readers are. We know who our paid subscribers are, down to the last census data tract. And so we have a lot of that. We know all of you by your ages, by your median income, education levels, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We know how many of you are reading and how many of you are not. The difficulty that the newspaper, and it's not just newspaper anymore. I think people make the mistake of thinking, and they see me all the time, and they say, oh, geez, it's too bad your newspaper's going out of business, because they read all this kind of doomsday stuff. I point to this newspaper when Obama won the presidency. This has now become our #1 bestseller, like in our history. And there's no question, most of you out there, I would guess, you like the idea of holding something in your hand, and you can take this into the bathroom and you can take it wherever you want. And you can't do that with a TV set or computers.
That you can.
Well, maybe you can in some places.
Yeah, battery power becomes an issue after a while.
But if anybody wants a copy of this, I'm selling these for $10 a piece. And the mighty New York Times, this is their edition, and they're selling this now. You can get this for $14.95 if you like, but not my copy. It's the only one I've got. The point is, people, they want to read us. We have no problem with audience. If you take our paid subscribers for the newspaper, and which is about 80,000 or so, and with 3 readers per paper, 240, 250,000. And then our unique visitors on our website, we actually have more people paying attention, reading, and watching what my staff produces. People tend to forget that we have an online service too, and it is growing. The main problem that we're facing when you hear doomsday about the newspaper industry is the fact there has been a revenue decline in some of our key areas, the automobile industry, real estate, et cetera, et cetera. And the revenue growth is not what we would like it to be. We sort of thought a lot of that revenue growth would be picked up online, and it's just not happening, and we can get into that as to why. But we feel like we know our readers very well, and they know us very well, and it's kind of a love-hate relationship in a lot of cases because we are dominant. And again, some of you in that room out there will love me one day and hate me the next, depending on what the issues are. And one other, I'd just like to say, Patrick, one other thing just about ethical dilemmas, and I know I want to get into this. Some of my ethical dilemmas involve situations that are very, very personal in the sense that I'm dealing with the people involved. like the police department, who will call me as to why do I want to print the name of a police officer who shot and killed someone, like an executive who got picked up soliciting a prostitute on Pacific Coast Highway, and we're running the names of the men who were arrested because people in the area said, you run the names of all these, of the women, the prostitutes, why don't you run the names of the men who are doing it, which we started doing. And this man called me up and was crying on the phone saying, you can't print my name, it's going to destroy my marriage. I remember saying to him, why didn't you think of that before you went out there? But we're running into that kind of situation every day, in addition to what I would say are the more generic kind of dilemmas about covering Sarah Palin and McCain and issues like that. And I'd like to get into that.
Yeah,
we'll
do that. We'll talk about audience right now, and then we'll talk about our content, our product, and we'll talk about kind of methods of delivery and things that we look at to evoke that response that we're all looking to do. Nancy.
We get ours from it's kind of an ever-changing world. Right now, the quickest way to get viewer response and the best way is emails and the web. People email us all day long. The other way we get them is we stream our noon, 2, and 3 on KCAL live on the web, and people go into the chat room and tell our anchors about breaking news happening in their neighborhood. Hey, I just heard an explosion. So we get information that way. We get it the typical way of a lot of research, talking to people, focus groups, things like that. We get information every morning in the form of our ratings, because every morning we get our report card of who watched us and what their age are, and it's about a 12-page document that you pore over and you kind of look at. Probably the best way we get it is by hiring a diverse group of people in the newsroom. And by hiring a diverse group of people, I like to say we have one of every flavor of something. And it doesn't have to be, they don't have to all be one thing. They don't have to all be on the air. They don't have to all be, but managers, on-air people, reporters, photographers, editors, just somebody willing to bring that voice into meetings and to help make a difference. And so that's really a big part. And not only diversity, I mean all sorts of diversity, whether it's religion, whether it's ethnic, but also geographical. We like our people to live all over the place. We have a lot of people living in the South Bay. I got people living in Orange County. I live in Castaic. I don't know if you guys even know where that is. So, we've got people living all over the Southland, and that's good for us because they bring those experiences in, and so that's been a good way for us. But primarily lately, it's been a lot of email and a lot of web stuff, because now those people, though, are younger. A lot of people that watch us, they still call, and we still have an operator, and we still talk to everybody, and we try to touch every single person that calls us or emails us. We get back to them.
Ralph, how do you stay in touch with audience and your responsibility to that audience?
We get measured every week with the box office scores that get on the news and in the newspaper. I don't know why everyone else is so interested about that. It's really arcane in some ways, but that tells us, whether or not we're doing a good job in some ways. It also feeds sort of a derivative mentality that if dodgeball did good last weekend, maybe we should make a movie on Foursquare or volleyball or something. I don't know. I'm not sure that's a good thing. But generally, big movies are trying to be 4-quadrant movies. They're trying to get to all audiences. I think, generally, I like to go to movies where my feet stick to the floor and see what the audience is doing and how they're responding and what they're enjoying. And we try to generally find movies that have a long life, because that's where you're going to be able to actually make a return on your investment. And a library value for a movie has a lot more appeal than simply a movie that is in and out. I feel bad for my friends, Mr. Zucker doing American Carol, that has a movie that has a lifespan of about a month. I don't know what the library value is. I don't know why you buy a DVD of that movie. There's an article coming out in the New York Times tomorrow, the magazine section, written by a friend of mine, Kevin Kelly, and I think it's going to demonstrate that most people will see movies that I make on an airplane. More people view the actual number of eyeballs will be more in an airplane than actually in a theater. So the dynamics, the metrics are changing in terms of how you demonstrate a return on investment. And so, you know, we also try to pay attention on the comic book movies. We're paying attention to the core audience, but you don't do everything they say. You know, all the fanboy geeks, you know, wanted us to make the first X-Men with all the guys wearing yellow spandex suits. Well, everybody's not built like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and so it's not going to be as interesting. And so we hear those comments, we pay attention to those, but we don't do that because we're making a movie and we have to change things, and we got to make a story that's cinematic and compelling, and hopefully you want to tell your friends about. So we actually made a joke about that in the first movie when we brought out uniforms. So,
Ralph, what about the worldwide audience, and how do you deal with that audience?
well, there's a distribution, you know, at a studio at least, they have a highly refined theater distribution system, and those a lot of ideas get passed out by the executives ahead of time to some of those key territories to see if there's interest in that. And then there's historical data. You know that American comedies don't necessarily translate well. Sports movies don't translate well into foreign territories. So there are certain genres that you stay away from, and others you try in spite of that because of the filmmaker, because of the artistry that's going into it. So Australia, that Fox is releasing here in a couple of weeks, looks like a fantastic, epic movie. You know, it's a risk as to whether spending that kind of money will actually pay off in Belgium and in Germany. Do they want to know what happened in Australia? Baz Luhrmann is a big talent, so it's going to be interesting, and there's a lot riding on that decision.
Yeah. Ralph, Rich, and Nancy both talked about a diverse community and a diverse newsroom. Are there cultural things ethically that you need to be concerned about when you're producing a movie? I know Special Olympics this year, we had a concern about a movie that came out and actually garnered a lot of support in complaining about the movie because of the way it depicted the special needs population. How do you deal with those kinds of issues in movie making?
Well, again, you're trying to tell a story, you're trying to reach an audience and entertain them. So there are some people who are making movies, hopefully I'm not doing this, but some people are making movies to irritate people and provoke a response. So it might be Michael Moore, it could be, you know, the Farrelly brothers in making their movies generally sort of trash everyone. And so if everybody's a target, you know, maybe that's okay. But yeah, I think the audience is diverse, and it's hard to get people into a theater, so you can't afford to piss off people because they're not going to buy your movie.
Right. Rich, when diverse community, are the things that you need to be concerned about pictures you run or stories and the way you tell the story?
Well, that's a huge concern, both positively and negatively. Long Beach is the most diverse city in the United States, so we're very cognizant of the audience that way. In the positive sense, we are trying, this is easier now than it was maybe 20, 25 years ago. We have learned, and this is not an original thought, but if we write about people and run their photos in the paper, then they'll tend to read the newspaper. And American papers weren't doing that with a lot of the minority groups. I'm going back now 30, 40, 50 years. In Long Beach now, this is not becoming an issue anymore. When we write health stories about and call up doctors, chances are those doctors are going to be female, they're going to be Latino, they'll be African American, so that's not an issue. In terms of the negative, though, we are cognizant of, in a lot of our crime stories, crime coverage, especially the gang situation. Many of the young men, especially involved, are from minority groups. And we ran one time on our front page, I think the police had arrested something like 14, 15 young men, and of course they were all minority. And so we would hear from that community saying, all you do is run the bad news or run these people bad news on our front page, and white people, etc., with the good news. So we try to obviously guard against it. We still cover that news, but we try as best we can to be fair and balanced and be careful of always running, again in crime stories, minorities who happen to be either the suspects or or they're caught, and then they go through the legal system. And that's a really big concern that we have. We try to balance it off with fair coverage. We're working on a series now. We're going to be calling it in about 2 weeks, Unsung Heroes. And it's going to be profiles of adults and young people who are toiling in the vineyards with young people, trying to do something about youth violence in our high schools and universities, et cetera. And we're going to put that story on page 1 and do that throughout the year. And so, yes, we're very sensitive to that, and we talk about it all the time.
Let's talk a little bit more about your product, the content, things that were acceptable, things that weren't acceptable 10 years ago. It's shifting to where more and more things are acceptable. If you take our show like 2.5 Men, it used to be that innuendo was what was used, and now they just come out and say it. So and when you think about content and news and movies and that kind of stuff, you first think about sex and drugs and violence, and how do you determine what's appropriate for your audience and what kinds of decision making and examples that you have to make in that area?
Well, we have the MPAA group of parents that sets a rating for us, although I'm not sure that's, because it's a product that's an art form, I'm not sure that that's a perfect system. I'm not sure what to replace it with. But they do a pretty good job, I think, of at least warning parents of what the rating is. The fact that kids sneak in or parents allow, my wife and I are always amazed in going to a movie that we know is R-rated because of violence or whatever, and parents bring their kids for babysitting or whatever. These kids are exposed to violent images that, as parents, we wouldn't do. That's just, it's shocking to me that continues and goes on. But, it's, we usually try to abide by that, and I think economically, a PG-13 movie is going to do better than an R-rated movie. So from pure economics, if you can do it, a G-rated movie is great, but I think those are absolutely the hardest movies to make. To be able to entertain, a 4-year-old and a 40-year-old in the same screening is really quite difficult. I participated in a movie called Inspector Gadget, which I call a parent punisher, because
God, I just saw that the other day.
I'm sorry. If you were under 10, you probably loved the movie. I pitied the parents that went to that movie because it was a punishing
It's a
2
rite
hours.
of passage.
Yeah. So.
Ralph, what about, Patrick said, you see the Sopranos now and cable and that proliferation. The profanity that's awful, and the sex and everything. That's got to be having some sort of residual effect, I would think. These are things we never used to see very much. How is that affecting the making of movies
Well,
and
people
these
subscribe
ratings?
to HBO and they want that. They are obviously paying for it and they like it.
Yeah, so does that?
Again, economically, we're trying to find movies. I'm trying to find the movies that I produce. I'm trying to find movies that are PG-13 or better. I'm not afraid of, and I have made R-rated movies for the right material. Mm-hmm. But it depends on the audience you want to get to. The audience, it's a huge country where, the rest of the world must look at us as being prudish in some ways and then completely off our rocker on other
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
And we provide all those opportunities. Look how many channels, look how many diversion, there is. The Christian community complains about R-rated movies and, that we can't do that. But, the box office that pornography takes in has to be consumed by some of those same people if they're 75% of the moviegoers. Mm-hmm. It's such a double standard. Mm-hmm. But people are going to choose to consume that stuff. So what I try to do is try to make product that I think has an entertainment value, has some lasting value, and you just got to be a better storyteller to be out there. If you want people to not skip over your commercials, you better make better commercials.
Yeah, exactly. I will tell you, I'm here to admit that I do record shows, and my wife and I do play shows back, As we're skipping through commercials, though, we try to name the advertisers as we go. There's actually a lot. There's actually a lot of research out there that says that actually when you're skipping commercials, that mentally you're seeing a lot more than you know you are. So there's actually some impressions
It's the
about what's happening.
it's the buttered popcorn
Yeah.
in the frame of the
Well,
movie.
yeah,
It's the-
actually Ralph does that in his movies. A little frame of buttered popcorn and this, whatever, and so you go out and buy the popcorn. Just kidding, Ralph. That's another whole ethical issue.
Yeah.
But it's amazing when we record these shows and we like shows. I'll name some of the shows that we air just because we like The Unit and we like some of the CSI stuff, but we love Criminal Minds, and in the queue of this recorded stuff we'll also have something like a Dexter or something, and so we'll be watching The Unit, and all of a sudden we go, okay, what do you want to watch next? Okay, let's watch Dexter, and we start to watch Dexter, and the minute the language starts and the minute you go, you just to make your point, I mean, it just is so many different variables out there and how we address that. But Nancy, when you look at stuff like violence and sex and stuff, obviously there's things that you have to show on the news, but what are some examples of things that you have to refrain from, or that is our kind of code of what you show and what you don't show?
Well, for us, it's it's all context, and we tackle some hard issues, some tough issues. We did a series this last week on AIDS and on the growing number of people now who are, again, being victims. And it's primarily African American men. And there's no way to say it other than that. And we spent 4 minutes on the piece, actually 5.5. I tried to cut it, but I couldn't. And it was a piece that we'd worked on for a month and a half, but we put it in a time zone. We put it at 10 o'clock. Where we don't stick it at 11 o'clock in the morning when maybe there's a 6-year-old kid watching that may be watching alone, and doesn't have a parent to ask. So really context is kind of our theme in terms of what we repeat, what we don't repeat, where we put things. And so you'll see us run some things like that at 10 and at 11. You won't see us put it on the air at 4 and 5, because we have to make that decision that yes, are parents supposed to be, they're monitoring their children? Yes, but like those in the movie theater, the TV set is almost always on, and during the day and some other day parts, we like to consider ourselves sort of a safe zone. We have a few things that we do just because they're Bauer rules, and one of them is that I believe that children have the right to do a lot of really awful things in their lives under the age of 18 without me blasting their face on the air. So I don't put, unless they've been declared as an adult in a trial, and then even then I don't sometimes put them on the air. And legally I can. Legally I can go get them, I can go shoot them, but I just feel that that's, now once you're 18, you're kind of fair game, and if you're goofy then I'm going to put you on the air. In terms of, we had a situation with the train crash. The kids called, no, actually the kids didn't call. We were combing YouTube, and we found the foamers, they're called, and they are train buffs. And they put a piece on YouTube in honor of the engineer, and it was the night of the crash. It was around 9 o'clock at night. And so we saw it, and we called them, and we went down to the train station the next day, and we met with them, and we met, and their parents were there, and everything was fine. And when the texting became the big story, obviously the parents were very upset with us, and arguably so. But a couple of them were actually over 18. But what we did was we stopped using their names. We stopped using, and we stopped using their faces, and we only showed the texting part after that Sunday, because we felt like, okay, we got our story out. We don't need to keep blasting their name, because of course they were all getting a lot of phone calls and a lot of hate calls and things like that. So we deal with those issues every day. The other one is we rarely will show a dead body, because I believe that you should have respect for the dead, and why do we need to show it? If the person's dead, the person's dead. You can say it. Sometimes one gets on the air, and you'll hear somebody yell out, and then you got to go back in the server now and you black it. And it's much easier with the technology now to kind of handle it than it was to find 50 pieces of videotape that got dubbed. So those are some of the things that we do, but it's primarily everything in context, because, and that where you get into trouble with that is your teasing. And your teases and file tape always get you in trouble in television. But your teases, because they're out of context, they're going to hit in another day part. So you have to watch what you're putting in there, because they're going to hit an audience that maybe the piece isn't necessarily for. So then you ask yourself, well, should I be teasing that piece in that day part? Well, maybe not, but wow, that is a huge audience there. And so you run into those all the time, and we go through those just day after day.
And I'm sure that we have a lot of car chase fans in the audience. Are there issues with car chases that are decisions, like if there's a standoff or that kind of stuff?
Yeah, the worst car chase we had in LA, I don't know if any of you remember this, I don't even remember what year it was, I should. I think it was back in the late 90s, was we had a gentleman blow his brains out on everybody's television set. So if we know somebody's really dangerous, you'll see us pull way out. We'll start getting calls, push in, but we don't, because we think, okay, this guy's going to get out of the car and something could happen. People love chases because it's the element of surprise. It's the element of the unknown. And but every day when you're in the newsroom, and we just had one a little while ago, my daughter was actually, I had to go get her, childcare, that whole thing. And she was sitting in my office doing homework, and it was at night, and I actually don't know why I was there, but it was about 9 o'clock at night, and it was a woman, and she got out of the car, and she was naked. And you hear somebody on the assignment desk scream, "Oh my gosh, she's naked!" And everybody in the newsroom goes into one form of something or another. And my 10-year-old looked at me and said, "Why is that a big thing?" And I looked at her and I said, well, because we can't put naked people on television. And so I watched her absorb it, and that's when you do the pull out. But car chases they're interesting.
Yeah, it is an interesting dilemma about car chases. Some people think that it's for entertainment value and people want to see crashes. And then there's the responsibility of, well, is there a news story there? And we've seen situations where someone at the end of a car chase gets out, runs into a neighborhood, and we've had examples of people who've locked their doors and windows because there's somebody running through their neighborhood trying to get in. But we also have over time have had certain rules and stuff when we work directly with the Highway Patrol. There's actually a coordinator that coordinates with us, because at one point we showed wide this car chase going on, and there was a driver who was actually on the cell phone with his girlfriend back at the apartment, and she was telling him how many police cars were behind him and that they're going to lay a spike strip, and he avoided it and all that. So we have rules, but it's an interesting dilemma if that's the case. I want to leave time for questions and answers, so I'm going to throw out.
Could I just add
Yeah.
on photos?
Sure.
An interesting thing for us. One area where we get a lot of criticism, and this goes with the audience, our audience being conservative, liberal, and that's in the area of gay coverage. And going back when the first Gay Pride Parade started, about, 26 years ago, the Press Telegram, the first year, we had it inside the newspaper, and then I think it was the second year, we started putting it on the front page and got tons of critical comments. We had over 200 cancellations of the newspaper because why are you putting that kind of stuff on the front page? And over the years, our coverage, and a lot of this is because of the gay community talking to us too, we are covering more we're not covering the aberrations in the parade. We do some of those photos, but it's the mothers who have sons and daughters who are gay, and they're now in the parade. The mayor's now in it. The police chief is in it. There's one photo that we are careful about, and I guess all I can say in this area is because it's where we get the most response, and that's men kissing. We get those photos, and we tend to shy away because all I can say is that I just know we would get many, many more complaints than when women are doing that. The other thing, obviously, there are a lot of photos involving women, and we do watch that stuff. One of the photos that we got the most negative comment on was somebody from this very university. Her name is Misty May, and when she plays volleyball with her partner, And we had one picture over one time where they're both kind of just wrapped around each other. And you can't see much of anything except their skin. And people said, why are you running? Why do you do that? Why are you doing that? So we get a lot. One other photo that's got a lot of comment just recently, and Braden, you'll know about this one. There were 4 young people convicted of it. It was an evil, terrible killing, a gang member, and in the courtroom, he doesn't shoot the bird once but twice with both fingers to our photographer. And we debated long and hard, is that page 1? We know people are going to complain about it, but we also know it tells you something about this young person with no remorse, no contrition. His victims' relatives were in the courtroom. We ran that inside, and we still got loaded with complaints about, why are you doing that for? We don't need to see that. We have the same thing about dead bodies, but every once in a while we'll do that, but we think about it.
Yeah, wow. We could do this all day long, I think. And
Okay.
Maybe we need to have a repeat performance next semester or something, and expound on all this stuff. But to give you guys time to ask questions, I'm going to hit on one last issue that I'd like you guys to comment on, and that's the idea of how media shapes public opinion. We've just come out of a presidential campaign where more than ever, media had an impact on the way people responded to that campaign, responded to the candidates. We had kind of a blurring of what's opinion and what's news. We had news channels featuring Bill O'Reilly, on Fox News. We had MSNBC and Keith Olbermann, and is that news or is that opinion? Liberal papers versus conservative papers. Michael Moore, as we mentioned, and David Zucker. David Zucker, as you may know, is a conservative director whose credits include Airplane and Naked Gun, and produced a film actually spoofing Michael Moore and the Hollywood liberals. It's Hollywood versus the heartland, all those kinds of things. So talk about the issue and the role that we play. It seems like fairness, where you used to go, okay, I've aired 2 minutes of this candidate, and so now I need to air 2 minutes of this candidate. It seems like fairness in our industry is kind of gone out the window. So comment, would you, on the issues you face regarding shaping public opinion?
Well, it has a big impact. I mean, you think about 45 years ago today, JFK was murdered. And more people probably know more about that from Oliver Stone's movie than they do from actually having, done their own research about that issue. I just happened to be in Dallas. I'd never gone to the Texas Book Depository, and it was very interesting and stimulating a week ago to do that. But I think one of the things that probably we share in each of these businesses is making an emotional connection. In making a movie, whether you're making a comedy or a thriller, a horror movie, an epic, you need to make an emotional connection with the audience. And the more you're able to do that, the more you're going to get a response, and you're going to make a connection, and you're going to get an audience to view that. Well, that's the same thing we do in advertising. I would think that's the same thing in some ways. Maybe it's inadvertent, maybe it's purposeful in the news or in print. There's an article I think was mentioned to you by, I think, Patrick Goldstein in the LA Times about how that is a common, and look at the emotional connection of people that want to line up and buy newspapers of that event. I mean, that's an emotional connection. They want to take something back with them that reminds them of that. So I think that's maybe one of the things that's a thread that connects us all, being responsible about that, having integrity about that, taking a long-term view about that, I think boils down to some of the daily decisions you're talking about, where you're on that firing line every day. I just get on the firing line, a bigger firing line, every 2 years.
Yeah, I think that it's kind of a two-headed beast. The election was, our goal during the election is that everybody you see on my air, you have no idea what they are, how they're voting, what they think. I don't want you to know. I don't want to know. Unfortunately, I did find out a lot in this election, and I had to tell them that I didn't. That doesn't belong on the air. And it's mostly because there's that line that's blurring, where there's blogs, there's the internet, and you ask a lot of young people, and their lines aren't as definite as I'd like to think that ours are of a certain mature age. still young at heart. And so that becomes difficult, but, and in terms of shaping public opinion, the way I try to shape it and the way we try to shape it is to put all that information out there and then let everybody decide, and then take up some of the emotional issues. Like we did a great campaign this election with the voter registration people, and all our anchors got involved. And you know, I sat back when our public affairs director came in and hit me with it, and I said, "Oh yeah, well, I don't know, it's elections, but who's going to tell somebody that it's bad to tell people to vote?" So, you know, we went, and that campaign was a beautiful thing because it allowed our anchors to encourage people to do something that's our God-given right and that we should all be doing. But the emotional connection is huge in television because, as you know, we always go after people, and then we sometimes leave behind the story, the information. And that's where our website has really been helpful for us and come in, where we can give that information to people and be more like print on our website and give the information.
I think that's such a great question. And as I'm listening to Nancy and Ralph, I'm thinking, what's our best example? I think it's Tom Hennessy. And most of you know Tom, our local columnist, a beloved figure. He's raised almost $1 million to send kids to camp. He's raised money to buy dogs for the police department for drug sniffing. He's done all these wonderful things. Most people didn't quite know his politics, though. And so the other day, he's semi-retired now, he felt a need to endorse in the presidential campaign. Not only did he endorse Obama, but he attacked Sarah Palin. And you would think that this beloved character now was maybe the most evil person on the planet. And although people might have think he was a little liberal, it wasn't until he actually came out and endorsed Obama against McCain and Palin that many of his supporters until that time thought he was very great. And we run into that in our business. We try to have a wall between our news coverage and our editorial comment. And that works most of the time, doesn't it, Randy? We cover Randy Gordon fairly and his chamber activities and all his political stuff that he does. Then on the editorial page, he gets whacked by Larry Allison. But and the other question there is, and Nancy's raising it, who is a journalist anymore? We could go on forever on that. Is Rush Limbaugh a journalist? No. Is Sean Hannity a journalist? No. Oberman.
Small J's, no cap.
Et cetera. But who is a journalist anymore? I hear even in my own newsroom, reporters will come with some sort of a story. It's usually on a national level. And I say, how do you know that's true? Well, it was on the internet. And we're running into urban myths, and there's such a proliferation of that. And you talk about the John Edwards case, which was broken by the National Enquirer, which the mainstream media, we don't trust the National Enquirer because they're not up there with us, and there's a certain amount of arrogance with that. And with all these blogs and the things, and we are trying, because obviously we are mainstream, we're trying to sort those things out. And we are not the only ones anymore breaking stories.
I think it's actually a great movie idea. That what if the stories reported in the National Enquirer are true?
Yeah.
There's a movie idea there.
That's a good one.
That's great. Well, let's open it up to some questions, and because of the time and stuff, and so that we can get as many questions as we can, why don't you direct your question to one of them, so as opposed to everyone chiming in, and maybe we can get some more questions in during our time. Yeah.
Question for Nancy. Actually, I'll start with a plug. That's our camera back there for the Beach TV channel operated by the university, and so this will be on television within a week or two. Check the channel. But that is related to my question. I very much admire what you've been able to do with your operation, but you used a phrase that I hope to make you regret, and that phrase was bedroom community in reference to Long Beach. Most of the people in this room could tell you how much more this community is than a bedroom community. If you pick this city up, dropped it into rural California, we have 4, 5, 6, maybe more broadcast television outlets of our own. As it is, because we're in the shadow of LA, we have none. So where are we in our ability to be able to get the coverage? I know the challenge you face in this, what'd you say, 49,000 square miles or something like that? But there is so much happening, if you look at Rich's paper, every day in this city that is of significance to the entire region of Southern California.
Well, while you've hit a subject very near and dear to my heart, I actually think every community is a bedroom community, only because that's kind of the time I grew up. Downey was a bedroom community.
Well, Downey is.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, there we go.
Very
There we
fair.
go.
Very fair.
Los Angeles is too.
You know, there are a lot of people that will tell you, a lot of television people will tell you that local news is dead. That's a very common phrase. Local news is dead. Local news is dead. And it's not. And what we have to do, which is going to be really, really hard, but in order to serve the public, is we all have to sort of begin partnerships and begin ways to serve the public. And that's going to take us, and you know why we have to do that? Because they're telling us that's what we have to do. They're saying, you're only in my neighborhood when something bad happens. And you know what? They're right. I don't, when people call me and say that to me, I don't say, oh no, we were there for that hero a month ago. Because quite honestly, you know, the last time the news came to Castaic was when my house almost burned down a year ago. And that was the last time anybody came to where I live. And so we have to begin to reach out to the newspapers who have websites, who have video departments. I just wrote down your channel so that I can call you next week and ask you what you do.
I'll give you a card.
Because, you know, we have we can serve the public without all of a sudden growing into one big monster that everybody's afraid of, if we keep our values and if we keep our ethics about us. We can do that, and we can serve better. And the economy is such right now that it is really difficult. You're right, Long Beach, Orange County, Riverside, all of those would be television markets unto themselves and are, you know, larger than a lot of television markets would be. So it's a huge challenge every day. We try to spread out. We have bureaus for that very reason, you know, in those areas. And, you know, until the economy went a little bit south, quite honestly, one of my ideas was a South Bay Bureau, because we're here a lot, and it not only is a good idea, but it saves on wear and tear on your people, your trucks, your equipment. If you can put people where, and then they live in those areas. The people that we then have, that they're required to live there and be part of that community, and then that brings that a little bit more to the, kind of bubbles up to the top.
That's a huge challenge for us as local broadcast stations, particularly for KCAL, who's an independent and prides itself on being a provider of local news. 5.5 million homes in this market, 5 counties, major cities. All of those good things make it very, very difficult for us to reach down and be as local as we want to do, and that spends a lot of our time and trying to figure out how we're going to do that as we move forward.
Patrick, could I just ask Nancy a question on that?
Sure.
I'm wondering, do you see any differences, similarities with the Long Beach market compared to the other areas that you serve? Are there any?
Other than the water, you know, is similar to some of the other areas, but it's amazing. You know what? We're all looking for the same things in life. Most of us. You know, no matter what you are, and so it's. Even though it's 5 counties and it's a lot of folks and a lot of mileage, except for a few instances of, you know, people living in the desert with no electricity or something like that, we're pretty much the same.
Yeah. We're also faced with the challenge of when we do look at a community, and sometimes it's issues that are going on in that community, it looks like we're beating up on a community, because we can't do that with every community, and every community has those kinds of issues that if you put a light on it, there's great things and there's some issues that they're challenged with. So it's an interesting dynamic. Yes?
I just have to get back to the car chase thing, because this really fascinates me on an ethical side. I'm a professor of ethics as well as law here at the university.
And by the way, if you guys can just kind of briefly what the topic is, because they're not mic'd. So for the camera, if you just
Oh, okay.
And
We're
answer
going
the
to talk
question. I'm
about
sorry,
car
go ahead.
chases.
Go ahead.
I recall distinctly, this was years ago, Dan Rather was the lead anchor on CBS at that time. There was a car chase, which I was watching, I admit, and the national news was then at 7 p.m. And I wanted to see what the station did as the chase was continuing into 7 o'clock, and they blew out the national news and stayed with that chase. And I'll never forget that. And this just, I mean, you can argue that there's news value to showing this chase for 2 hours, that people have been locked indoors and all. But I think it's really like NASCAR. People want to see cars crash and something happen. And if I had to rate these chases, it's 90% entertainment and 10% news. And I just like to have you guys comment relative to ethics and car chases.
Car chases have changed over the last decade. They haven't, we have. I think I remember that night. I wasn't at CBS. I was at a competing network. And I believe that I blew out Tom Brokaw. And, and my general manager was about ready to walk into a huge network meeting with all the network people who were in town, of course, and I totally set her up accidentally. And Tom Brokaw wasn't actually anchoring the show that night, even though it has his name on it, but he was at the dinner. And so I thought that the car chase was more important, and I did the same thing. And it may have been that night, it may have been a different night. You know, when they were back then, when everybody was watching them, it was, oh my gosh, we have to. Now it's a little bit of a grain of salt. Now it depends how fast somebody's traveling. Now it depends. So you'll see people do different things. You'll see us put a car chase in the box so that we can still go on with the content of our news, but you can figure out if that guy's going to crash or not. Now we run, and there, it's a huge ethical issue of, first of all, do you even do it? You know, and there's one station in town that doesn't do the car chase, but the second it's over, they go into live coverage on the aftermath. And I'm like, whoa, okay. But that's kind of strange too. So everybody has their, you know, when they sit in meetings and they figure it out. But you do have to weigh constantly how important this is, what else I have to get on, and am I going to take commercials during the car chase? Am I going to make money, or is somebody going to turn and go to another station? And so we've evolved over time to the point where unless somebody, now there are car chases where guys are really crazy, and those are usually the side streets even more than the freeways. And we do want to warn people, hey, it's in your neighborhood. And so a lot of times you'll see us box it. Other times you'll see us blast it out. We consider what we've got that night. We consider where we are in the broadcast. If we're through our news segments and we're blowing out sports and weather, you know, rock on, let's go. You know, if it's pouring, if it's going to rain, well, maybe not the weather. You know, how much sports is in the show, what's in it. And so the car chases are evolving over time.
Do you look at what your competing stations are doing to determine what you do?
24 hours a day.
Yep.
So if they're running a chase, that might incent you to run the chase?
No, because I may not even be there. I mean, it's so complicated now that it's not just if they're on it, we're on it. With anything, car chase, fire, anything, it's what's the best for your broadcast at that minute. Now, with the duopoly, it's not always the same answer. And that's where our toughness comes in, and our ethical issues of just ourselves comes in, because what's right for KCAL isn't always what's right for CBS, and vice versa. And so then we have to weigh that too. So you'll see us sometimes put something on one station, and then we're not on at the same time, but the next hour will pop up and you won't see it on the other station.
And quite honestly, it's the beauty of the duopoly, I might say, is that if we're on a car chase on Channel 2, we'll take you to the national news and we'll throw you over to Channel 9 and continue the car chase.
Yeah.
Let's, who's got a question for Ralph?
I got a question for Ralph.
Okay.
Ralph, I love your movies and seen quite a few. How do you negotiate the ethical aspects of developing hero archetypes and role models? Because your films are really addressed to a whole demographic that is looking for heroes, looking for someone to look up to, like Hugh Jackman. He's such a popular figure, and he actually commands such attention amongst the kids. I have an 18-year-old and a 28. we love your movies. Kind of explore how do you develop with the writers those models?
Well, they're pretty time-tested models in terms of a hero's journey, the Joseph Campbell stuff, as well as examples of other movie heroes. So there's a lot of data out there that you can compare against. I actually thought of a story. I was telling Pat about this earlier. On the first X-Men, I had done a TV series with Steven Spielberg about suburban cops, not downtown cops, and sort of all the wacky things they get into, and the danger they get into as well. And so I got to know a lot of police officers and a lot of that culture. And in the movie, there's a confrontation with the bad. Hey, sorry, all these names you probably don't know for not X-Men fans. I'm sorry, but Magneto in confronting Charles Xavier about.
We need an anchor named Magneto.
Right.
Nancy.
I'll get right on that.
In confronting him, the script called for him to raise the stakes to show how serious the story is, and to actually shoot somebody. And so it is Magneto who can control metal and guns, who actually manipulates a gun that floats in front of a police officer and shoots him. And I argued with the director that that's not, and particularly having just come from that, that's not the example we want to show to young people who are going to be consuming this product. And we argued about it, and I was getting nowhere. So I cheated. I took Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen to dinner, and I challenged them if that's the kind of example they want to have to talk about after the movie's over, and is that what they want their fans to see? And Patrick Stewart, especially as a father, convinced him. They went back, they convinced the director. And now what you see, if you happen to see the movie, the gun comes up, the gun is right in front of his head, and you don't know if he's going to pull the trigger, and you hear the bang, and then, because we're a comic book movie, you see the bullet right here spinning, and will he let go of the bullet and let the bullet go further? So you kind of got the best of both worlds. You got the kind of terror of, oh my gosh, he shot somebody. But then you have, because we live in this fantasy world in X-Men, where there's one more step, there's one more thing. So I think, that depends on who the filmmakers are. It depends on what they believe. It depends on, what kind of product they want to make. I'm not the one who's going to make Saw, hacking off people's limbs. People want to do that and consume that material. Have fun. I'll find another way to tell stories. So.
Do you consider yourself to be existential? Do you develop a philosophy of how to deal with that sort of thing? And
Those are big words for a filmmaker. I'm not so sure. I don't know.
Yikes.
Ralph, let's talk about the ethics of trailers. And how many trailers can you actually have before you see a movie? The times have come where, I think the last movie I saw there was 8 or 9. It used to be 2 or 3, and the marketing of those trailers to the kind of movie that you're going to see. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. I'm not the guy in charge of putting trailers in front of the theaters. That's usually negotiated with the studios and the exhibitors. But I do think that here in America, we have a limited attention span to do that. And I'm, unfortunately, an irreverent offender, because I'll watch movies even by some of my friends, and if I don't think it's worthwhile, I whisper loudly to my wife, video. And I think the audience is interacting a lot more about that. As a filmmaker, I fight very hard to be sure that what's in the trailer is in the movie, and that the intent of the trailer is not selling something that we can't deliver. So that's about the integrity of us as filmmakers. We fight hard for that. I understand we got to sell the movie, we got to market it, and otherwise we won't have people that enjoy what we do. But I think as filmmakers, I can't imagine too many filmmakers who wouldn't take that same position, that you can't start putting stuff in the trailer that's not in the movie, or slant it in a different direction. But all of us are not necessarily in charge of that material and have the final cut on that material when it gets to the theater. So that's it's a good question for a guy that cuts theatrical trailers at a studio. It's a good question for them.
Would anybody like to take your beloved executive editor to task? Any question for them? Yes.
Me? Yeah, my question has to do with more so than ethics in media, but rather, let's call it courage. And why see two extremes, let's say in 1973 when the New York Times, the Washington Post had the courage to publish a story that ultimately brought down a president. That's where we go to the other extreme, appears to me, like 6 years ago, that the media was pretty much led by the nose, having to do with the invasion of Iraq. My question to you is, in your professional opinion, is there a cycle in which we're going to see a pendulum come around again, or is it an irreversible trend?
Well, I was hoping someone would ask that because that's such a good question. The whole war in Iraq and how the press and how we covered it. And you talk about an ethical or a moral dilemma. It gets back into things like my country right or wrong, the President of the United States saying this, that, and the other thing. And we in the media essentially wanting to be patriotic, not wanting to be viewed as the enemy. There's no question that I think the press, we fell down in covering the early stages of the war. Now, of course, it's quite different because things have developed, which is the way life is. At first, I give you a break until I find out that you lied or you did, something you shouldn't have done. The key thing for me there as a journalist is, what if we were against that at the start? I'm running the New York Times, the Washington Post. Will I really come out against it then and maybe lose readers, lose advertisers? That's a real moral, ethical dilemma. But we've been fighting this very issue for years. I'm getting ready for today. I was reading books that I have from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, Edward R. Murrow, and others who were saying the press is not doing its job in confronting public officials. Some people accuse the Press-Telegram of not confronting the Long Beach City Council and the city manager and the mayor on this last issue with the bond issue, if you take it down to, the very local level. And it's a very good question because we don't have all the answers in the media. A lot of people think, we know everything, or again, you don't like President Bush, so we in the media ought to attack Bush. But if we like Bush, then we shouldn't do that. And there's a huge polarization in this country. The red-blue states and all that kind of stuff on TV, I automatically know when so-and-so gets on, I know it's going to be the spin doctor. And then we got people like Bill O'Reilly saying no spin, when of course he's spinning too. I mean, everybody is spinning something, it seems like, and we're trying to figure out when I grew up, we didn't have so many spin doctors and so many things going on that way. And the idea of the press being more aggressive, I think, is what you're getting at with our government, whether it's the Long Beach City Council or Congress or the President of the United States. My answer is that we do have to be more aggressive. We should be more aggressive. One of the major things we do under the First Amendment is to be a public servant and to be a watchdog. Nobody else is going to do that. If we don't do that, nobody's going to do it. People in this room, it's going to be very hard for you to do it. You don't have the resources. So I talked to my staff about how we have to be even more aggressive in, like investigating the Chamber of Commerce, the port of Long Beach, the Long Beach Police Department. But seriously, it's much more difficult doing that than, let's say, us writing some opinion about an editorial about President Bush. He's far away. It's the close-at-home issues that are much harder to deal with. Because these people, we live with them, they're neighbors, friends very often. We like to say we're a family, and in a family you can have disagreements and still get along.
Yeah. I started this by saying that what a great topic this is. Don't you agree? How many people have a hunger for ethical leadership? Yeah? Would you do me a favor and thank these guys for sharing with you guys?